My name is Amanda McCord. This is presented on behalf of Centier Bank. I wanted to take just a moment to introduce myself for those who don't know me. I'm a branch manager for Centier Bank. I'm located at our downtown South Bend office. I've been here for 6 years since this location opened. I've been in banking for 8 years, a YPN ambassador for 5 years. Fun fact about me, my fiance and I own a few small businesses up in Cassopolis, Michigan. So if I'm not around town doing events, volunteering, or with my team, you will find me up there or out with our dogs hiking. So let's go ahead and kick off our presentation. So to start out with, I want to just identify fraud, and it is defined as wrongful or criminal deception intended to result in financial or personal gain. 99% of the time it is going to be financial gain, and that is what we are seeing more and more prevalent in this world. And then I also wanted to take a minute to identify identity theft. So identity theft is the fraudulent acquisition and use of a person's private identifying information, usually for financial gain. According to the U.S. Postal Inspector, identity theft is America's fastest growing crime, and unfortunately, identity theft can happen to anyone and can lead to financial loss, negatively impact credit scores, and cause emotional distress for its victims. The best and most effective way to protect yourself from identity theft is to educate yourself on how to recognize it and prevent it. Unfortunately, we cannot always prevent it. I've seen it, and it's happened to me personally, where my information got leaked in one of the insurance company massive leaks, and they did get my social security number, date of birth. So we can't always prevent it, but we can do our best to try to offset it and be aware of what is going on. So some signs of identity theft: unexplained withdrawals or charges on credit card statements or bank accounts, missing bills or statements from your mailbox, receiving bills for services you didn't use, debt collectors call you about debts that are not yours, unfamiliar accounts on your credit report, website login username or passwords that suddenly do not work. I want to stop on that one and say we are seeing that happen a ton. I've had 3 coworkers have that happen as well. A lot of the companies that there are issues with, they are seeing that, and they are working as fast as they can to notify their clients. But anytime a user name or password does not work, definitely get in there, reset it, change your email, whatever you need to do. And then lastly, inability to file a tax return because of duplicate filings. So oftentimes with technology, while it is great, we are seeing a lot of the fraud and identity theft coming through cyber attacks. Cyber criminals use many techniques in an attempt to manipulate your emotions to assess your personal information. They will impersonate financial institutions and other government agencies and use fear, flattery, guilt, and other methods to trigger and coax you into providing information that could compromise your security. One way they do this is phishing scams. This is a tactic in which scammers pose as a trusted entity, normally through email or text, that includes a message that includes links that make it possible for your device to be accessed or hacked. So a common one I know I've personally got is FedEx, UPS. I believe I've had Amazon, where it's you've got a package. I'm pretty good about knowing what I've ordered and what I have coming to me. And it'll say like cannot be delivered or it's been returned. Click on this link for an update. If I know I'm not getting something, I'm not clicking on that link. Another one that's commonly seen, and I have clients calling all the time, is emails from Norton Security or other computer software security programs saying that their membership has expired and to click this link to renew it when they know they have not used it, but they're scaring them into thinking, oh, I paid $500 for this. I better click this link to figure out what's going on. So you do see phishing scams quite often, just using very common trusted businesses that you would normally use. Another type of scam or type of fraud we see is called spoofing. And that is a tactic in which scammers disguise their phone number or email address to appear as though communication is coming from a local number or trusted entity. This one can sometimes be harder to tell when that is coming through. We've seen it where a business is requesting a wire to be sent out to one of their vendors so they can get their merchandise. Somebody ends up spoofing that email address and changing it by just a simple number letter. I've seen it where they put a period in so you do not even notice that it's coming through. And then they send it on. We've had a client who ended up sending wiring about $50,000 to who they thought was their vendor. They ended up getting spoofed. So we are seeing that a lot, unfortunately. And unless you're looking for those minute details, and they are as well, that is where we are seeing that come through. So always be cautious on that. And if you ever need to, make sure you're calling to verify before sending money or clicking on anything. Scams and fraud. As identity theft scams grow more widespread and elaborate, it is important for consumers to stay informed on the latest scams and fraudulent tactics being used by criminals. So now I wanted to go over the most common scams we are seeing now that we know a little more about phishing and spoofing. So one that's been very common around our area is going to be bank impersonation scams. This one affected Centier personally. I know my other banks as well were having issues as well late last year into the beginning of this year. This is when someone calls claiming to be your bank, asking for account information or online banking information. If this ever happens to you, please hang up and call the number provided on the back of your debit card or visit your branch. So for example, when we had this impersonation with Centier last year, these scammers were calling from a number that was one digit off of Centier's number. It was coming through a Centier Bank. Somebody would be on the phone asking them or saying, hey, we noticed fraud on your account. Can you please give us your online banking username and password? That way we can reset it for you. We are never going to ask for that information. We are going to have you reset that yourselves. But for those who fell victim to this, they were giving their username and password out. And then those scammers were getting into their online banking and actually sending money through P2P or person to person out of the account. And oftentimes that is when money is lost and we are not able to return it. But that is a very common one. So don't ever give that information out over the phone. Your bank won't ask for it. Another common one is government IRS scams. This one I think is a pretty well-known one where somebody will impersonate somebody from the government, such as the FBI, and we hear this quite often, where a client or somebody we know personally will say, so-and-so called us from the government, FBI, saying if I do not give them money, they will come and arrest me. The government is never going to call to threaten you or ask for money. You are going to get a letter from them. Another one, which we slightly touched on, is package delivery scams. So, like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we don't ever want to click on links sent to us via email or text to check the status of our package deliveries. You know, or should be aware of the ones you are receiving and have those trusted numbers, but we always advise logging into the website to track that issue. That way we can prevent them from phishing or spoofing you. And then lastly, last on this slide, the person-to-person scams. Only use person-to-person or P2P services to send money to people you know. Unfortunately, with P2P, oftentimes those are not covered. If you were to find out you got scammed, the bank may not refund you for that. So always make sure you know who you are sending it to and that it is a trusted person. Next one is going to be a sweetheart scam. Unfortunately, we see this a lot with the older generation or people who are lonely. They end up finding a love interest on the internet. They're talking. These people spend tons of time making these clients, feel valued, loved. They're giving them sob stories. A very common one with the sweetheart scams is somebody's overseas for the military and they need X amount of money so that they can come home and be with them. Never transfer money from your bank account or buy gift cards or wire money to an online love interest. And make sure your grandparents are aware of this scam, and even parents or anybody you may know who you think could fall victim to that. That is one of the most prevalent ones. And unfortunately, a lot of times when we do try to talk to clients by that point, they are so invested that they do not believe us and they are believing this person until that person cuts them off when they will not send them money. Gift card scams. So this one we have seen hit businesses and people alike. No legitimate business or government entity is going to call or text you requesting payment and gift cards. We had a business come in asking for a large cash withdrawal. We ended up asking what that was for because it was very unstandard. And the owner said that they had been behind on AEP. They were not aware of that, but they were demanding that they paid on like $2,700 in gift cards to iTunes and Amazon, or they were going to shut off electricity. And for them, that was detrimental. They were a floral shop. They needed that to keep all their products fresh. Luckily, we caught that and stopped them from going to spend that card. But as a business owner, you hear that and how that can disrupt your business. And you might not be thinking and go and get those gift cards. And side note, a reason scammers like gift cards is they are not traceable. So once they're purchased and then passed out, they have no way of finding out who is using those. Another one is going to be fake check scams. So we have seen where clients are getting checks sent to them for no reason and they're bringing them in. Do not ever try to deposit or cash checks from people you don't know. Especially if you do not know why you are receiving that check. We highly advise just shredding it. If you're not sure, please come into the bank and talk it over with us. We've seen it where they sign up for this online job. I'm sure some of you have seen the promotions for wrap your vehicle, drive it around town. We'll pay you X amount of dollars and then you get to keep the rest. Those are scams. Nobody's ever going to pay you extra money to cash a check and then send it back. And then prize scams. Anytime you want a prize, you are never going to have to pay to claim it. So don't click on any links in text that claim to have you receive a prize or reward. And I am sorry, guys, I am getting out of breath. All right. And then also, so these are best practices to help avoid this as best we can. Unfortunately, it is not completely possible for us to avoid it. All our information is out there. The internet makes it easy for people to get. But here are the best practices to protect yourself. So you want to protect your private information. Keep your social security number, Medicare, and other account information in a safe place. Never give out private information via email, text, or incoming calls. If you are needing to give that information to anybody, let's say to open a bank account, get a loan, if you're emailing it, please make sure you are encrypting it. If you can, please come in or call that number. Do not give it if they are calling you. That way you can know you are giving that to a legitimate person. And then only discuss sensitive information when you place the call to a trusted number. So once again, if somebody's calling you asking for that, do not give it. Call back the number that you have from a business card, on the back of your debit card, anything such as that. And then don't take the bait. Do not open or respond to text messages from unknown numbers. Those links, that is where they will end up phishing you and then getting your information. Don't click on links in emails or text unless you're certain you know who it is from or what it is. And then do not respond to any requests to verify your information. Account numbers, social security numbers, passwords. Like I mentioned earlier, that was a huge issue when the banks were getting impersonated by the scammers because they were getting asked those questions. And then make sure you're tightening up your password practices. Don't store your passwords in or near your device. Change your passwords often. I know easier said than done. I am personally guilty of not changing my passwords often because I don't want to forget them. Try not to use family members' dates of birth, pets, or anything as passwords, and then keep passwords strong, using at least 8 characters, including a mix of lower and uppercase letters, numbers, and symbols. So the more variants you have in those passwords, the harder it is going to be for anybody to guess those. You want to avoid oversharing on social network, and that is because you want to limit your exposure online. So that entails not including your home address, date of birth, or other personal identifying facts. That being, if you are logging in and you're requesting or resetting your password, it may ask for some of that information. And if they can get that online, they can reset your password easily. Review and utilize your privacy settings often, and don't accept requests from suspicious or unknown accounts. Most of us know that. Typically we see those requests getting accepted from the older generation. So like I said, please go back, make sure you're talking to your parents, grandparents about this information, because we see them falling for scams or becoming victims of scams quite often. And then guard your gadgets. Make sure you're using firewall, virus, and spyware protection software for computer, tablets, and smartphones. Don't download anything that is not from a trusted source, and do not access banking or other sensitive information sites while using public Wi-Fi. So I know all this sounds extremely easy and basic. I know not to do this. I know what you're talking about. Sometimes it is easy. You get a quick email. So I've got one through work before that is a Zoom email. I didn't fully read it. It ended up being a spoofing email that my employer sent through just to test us. I failed because I did not notice or pay enough attention. I would think I was doing 10 other things, but try to make sure you are paying attention and not just clicking or rushing through anything. And then if you do believe you have been a victim of identity theft, here are the important companies to call. It is going to be Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And on top of them, you want to make sure you're contacting your financial institutions, credit card issuers, creditors, and local law enforcement. And you're keeping records of all correspondence. That way, if you do need to dispute something, it is on file and you can dispute that. One thing most do not know is you can get 1 free copy of your credit report yearly, which I do suggest doing. That way you can look over and review and see if there's any lines of credit or anything open that you do not recognize. And then resources, the Federal Trade Commission for reporting the incident, Indiana Attorney General's office for freezing credit reports, Postal Inspector. These are the leaders in the fight against identity theft because postal fraud is still quite prevalent, unfortunately. Police department, so they can document and report. We oftentimes, if we see a client dealing with this, we do have them go and file a police report. That way it is on file, and as things keep coming through, we can continue to return those or give the client back that money faster. Attorneys are always there for legal help. And then local banks, we are protecting your financial accounts. So come to us if you see something you are unsure of, or if you think you need a new account number or accidentally gave your information out. So all of these are ways you can help protect yourself. Come in, ask questions, send family members and friends. If you know anybody who's going through any of these possible scams, please point them in the right direction. So now I am going to open this up to any questions. And I do see a question. Sorry, I cannot see that. Jared, are there any password managers that you recommend and why? So personally, I do not have any experience with password managers. I have always kept my passwords locked up in my desk, in my filing cabinet, because I am old school. However, I can look into that and get back to you on that. I do know some of my associates do use password managers. I just have always chosen to keep everything pen and paper for now. All right, and Brian had suggested password manager like 1Password as well as Google Authenticator. Reagan, if we get a random Venmo, Cash App, PayPal transfer, should we accept it? Is there any way the person on the other side can obtain private information such as bank accounts, etc., if we do accept? Are you accepting through the app, Reagan, or is it a text message that is coming through? And I will give her a second to respond through the app. So through the app, there's no way that that is going to access your personal information, because the apps are set up to protect all of that. If you do not know who that is from, I would hold off on trying to, one, figure it out, because I have noticed through different services that we get paid through Venmo. Sometimes it's under a different name, but if you do not or were not expecting anything, do not accept it until you can confirm, to be on the safe side. Nobody's just going to randomly send you money. And if they accidentally did, then they can dispute it with Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, and their bank. So we do not recommend accepting anything if you were not expecting it. And then Jared, after the Equifax breach a few years ago, should we still trust Equifax with our data security? I would say yes. They got in a ton of trouble for that. First off. Secondly, they definitely have tightened their security measures. And overall, in general, it is hard. These scammers are smart guys. It is a fight to always stay 10 steps ahead of them when they seem to be 20 steps. Unfortunately, from almost the time of birth, as soon as you get your social security number, date of birth, all of that information is out there. So it's being cautious, checking your stuff. So pulling that credit report once a year to make sure everything looks good. Keeping an eye on your credit score. Sometimes that will be an alert if you know your credit score is a 700 and it drops to a 500. Something's not right. But just keeping an eye on that. If you don't feel comfortable with stuff, you can also pay to freeze your credit and then unfreeze it as you need it. So that is something that you can do as well to protect yourself a bit more. And then if you were in the Equifax breach, they did provide, I believe, 2 years of credit score freeze for you. All right. Brian, regardless if you're on a Mac or PC, I'd also recommend never running your computer's admin account. Only use a standard user account. By doing this, you can avoid allowing malware to install in your system and also make sure you have hard drive encrypted turned on. Correct. So Brian, great point. Always malware, everything on your computer running through, and run as a standard user account to help prevent any hacks. And then Eileen, always taught to shred all my mail with my name and address on it to protect personal data. Does this really do anything? I was actually taught that as well. Unfortunately, our address, if you own a home, it is completely public. Anybody can pull those records from the county city building. It does not hurt. So I will shred anything of importance. Mortgage statements, credit cards, bank statements, anything that could have any identifying information, it's not going to hurt to shred. If it is a basic piece of junk mail, I don't think that will hurt you. As I've said, your addresses, unfortunately, public information, especially if you own. And then Amanda, are credit monitoring apps like Credit Karma, NerdWallet, etc. a security risk, or are those considered good, safe ways to keep an eye on what's happening? So those are a great way to keep an eye on what's happening. The only reason we ever say not to use those is if you are using that for the FICO score and just using that to look at your credit score, which is a whole different conversation. So they are great to keep an eye on what lines are open. If anything new is open, we just ask that you don't pay attention to that credit score. They're oftentimes only pulling from one of the 3 bureaus, and that may not be what a specific creditor is using to pull. So just be mindful of that, but those are a great way. My grandpa personally used Credit Karma, and he did find out he had identity theft because he had a new line open that he did not do. So if you do have those, that is always a good way to review. And I'll reiterate again, get that free credit report from all 3 bureaus yearly, and review that. And if you're not sure how to read it, go to a trusted source like your banker. We can go over those with you and make sure that all those lines of credit, or if there are lines of credit that are open, that they are legit and what you have actually asked for. Make sure that I did not miss any questions. All right, and then Brian, for anyone interested, I recommend checking out cybersecurity expert Mark Goodman. Learned a lot from him, so he did include a link as well for that. So I will have to check him out as well, Brian, to learn more from an expert in regards to cybersecurity. Unfortunately, we are in a digital age where nothing is fully safe, and these fraud scam artists are extremely intelligent. So always arm yourself with the knowledge you can, keep your information protected. And yes, AI is making things worse. That is going to be a whole new thing. We have not seen it in banking just yet. But AI will definitely not make things better and probably make things harder as a consumer to protect our identity. So we will have to continue to watch that. Brian, does Mark Goodman go over AI in regards to cybersecurity and how that's affecting it? No, okay, not in that class. I will look around and see if I can find something in regards to AI and cybersecurity. Reagan, should we trust services like Google Wallet, Apple Wallet for keeping your credit card safe? Yes. I highly recommend it. I use those all the time. A lot of my coworkers do. They are no different than carrying your credit card around. So old schoolish, I should say. There are skimmers. People can walk near you and pull your credit card numbers from your wallet. Unfortunately, they are smart, like I keep saying. So they can get your information, whether it is in your Google Wallet, Apple Wallet, or if it is in your wallet. Another thing, not as common, but we still see, is they are putting the card readers on gas pumps and then pulling numbers that way. You want to wiggle that gas pump card reader a little. That'll show you if it wiggles. Do not put your card in. Go let the gas station know. If it stays in place and no movement, then you are good to run your credit card. But definitely trust Google Wallet, Apple Wallet. And if anything were to happen, report it to your bank, turn your card off. But definitely trust those services. Did anybody else have any other questions? I will give you guys a few minutes. All right, Jared, Google Pay actually stores your credit card information in their servers. Apple Pay and Samsung do not. rather tokenize your credit card information after verifying with your bank, so they never hold your credit card information. So that is great to know, how those operate. Each one has their own security measures and protocols. They do have to follow specific federal guidelines in regards to that. I use Apple Pay. I've used Google Pay personally. I think they're both great. Samsung Pay, I know it's set up very similar. I cannot speak for that though, as I do not have a Samsung. Questions. I know I went fast and I do apologize for speaking so fast, guys. These are a lot of the most common scams. And then if anybody writes checks, I will throw that in there. Those do have your account number and routing number, so just be cautious on who you are writing checks to if you are, because that is opening you up for fraud as well. I know a lot of our generation is switching over to the electronic payments, Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, Google Pay, Apple Pay, Samsung. Can you talk about the security benefits of using credit cards over debit cards? Sure thing, Jared. So one of the security benefits of using credit cards, sorry, let me get a drink, is that when it's not connecting your actual funds to that card, both cards are going to have limits on them. Credit cards oftentimes are a little higher than debit cards, but it's not actual money out of your pocket right then and there. We do recommend credit cards for some clients to use over their debit card, especially with specific transactions, because it is one, not coming out of their debit card instantly. Two, oftentimes a credit card, you can dispute the transaction and the dispute's turned around faster. That is not to say debit cards are not safe. They are extremely, it's just those are access to connected to the funds you have on hand. Which we have seen where somebody's got hacked and then they don't have money until we can reimburse and follow that dispute. So while both are great, credit cards do have that added benefit of if you were to get scammed, your on-hand funds are not getting touched at that point. Does anyone else have any other questions? If not, I want to thank you all so much for joining us today. I can send out links to sources if need be, and thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please let me know. And I hope you enjoy your Wednesday.